Welcome, listeners, to the Midnight Screen Files. Tonight's story is a little different from what I usually tell. I wanted to experiment with something that blends dark magic, action, and a little more humor. Because let's be honest, sometimes even in horror, you need a character who copes with sarcasm. This story follows Mia Blackwood, a skeptic working in her family's occult shop, who suddenly finds herself in the middle of a supernatural war over a cursed book that seems to have a mind of its own. Witches, betrayal, and an ancient grudge, plus a rival who's way too powerful, way too dangerous, and unfortunately, way too attractive for Mia's peace of mind. It's a mix of dark supernatural horror and dry humor, and while it's not my usual slow burn, eerie horror, I had a lot of fun writing it. So, if you enjoy it, let me know. If you don't worry. The usual spine-chilling stories are still coming. Now settle in and let's begin.
The tourists always ask the same questions. Do you have real spells? Has anything here ever, worked? Do you feel the energy in this place? And my personal favorite, are you a real witch? I used to roll my eyes. Now I just smile and give them the same rehearsed answer Mom taught me years ago. We sell curiosities, not guarantees. But magic is all about belief, right? It's bullshit, of course, but it sells. Welcome to Mystic Curiosities, the tiny occult shop in Mystic, Connecticut, where we profit off Instagram witches and bored tourists who want to feel like they've touched the supernatural. They browse our shelves of overpriced crystals, black candles, and dusty spellbooks they'll never use. They ask if they can hold the tarot decks. No, you can't. They buy sage bundles to cleanse bad vibes from their Airbnbs. None of it's real. Not the spells, not the energy, not the magic. But Grandma believes, and the longer I stay here, the more I wonder if I'll end up like her, sitting behind the counter for the rest of my life, watching the world pass by through the shop window. I never planned to still be in Mystic at 21. I had dreams. Big city, big life, big adventures. Paris, Tokyo, New York. I wanted to walk through streets buzzing with people who didn't know me, sit in cafes and eavesdrop on strangers, wake up somewhere new every few months. But then Grandma got sick. Mom needed help running the shop. And 1 month turned into 6, which turned into a year, which turned into this. Now, I don't even talk about leaving anymore, because deep down I know the truth. I never will. I've started to make peace with it. Not everyone gets to chase their dreams. Some people just have to be practical. And Mystic? Mystic is fine. It's small, quiet, touristy in the summer, dead in the winter. It has exactly 1 good coffee shop, 2 bars, and too many people who remember me from middle school. I know every street, every building, every name on every shop sign. It's comfortable. It's a trap. Actual shop things. After we closed for the day, I find Grandma at her desk, hunched over a book I've never seen before. She's always at that desk. Some nights she's doing actual shop things. Inventory, pricing, writing little hand-labeled descriptions on potion bottles. Other nights, she just stares into space, looking tired. Tonight, she's tracing her fingers over cracked leather, the dim glow of the lamp making her silver rings glint against the pages. You should be resting, I say, pulling my hoodie tighter around me. The shop is always freezing at night, no matter how high we crank the heat. I will, Grandma murmurs. She doesn't look up. She's studying the book like it might vanish if she blinks. I lean against the counter. What's that, another authentic spellbook for the shop? You know you're just encouraging the weekend witches, right? She finally looks at me, her gaze sharp. This isn't for them, it's for you. I snort. Right, because I'm so deeply spiritual. Mia, she says, voice low. The way she says my name makes me pause. She slides the book toward me, her frail hands resting on the cover. The leather looks old, older than the shop, older than anything I've ever seen. It's blackened at the edges like it was once caught in a fire. There's no title, no markings, but I swear for a second the edges ripple, like the whole thing is breathing. It's time, Grandma says softly. I frown. Time for what? For you to take this. Before they come for it. Something in my stomach tightens. I tell myself it's just the way she's looking at me, like this is life or death, but my hands feel weirdly numb. I try to shake it off. Who's they? The Etsy witches? Mom's yoga friends? She doesn't smile. Mia, she says again, and this time her voice shakes. I don't have much time left. I hate when she talks like this. Don't say that, I mutter, looking away. It's true. You're just being dramatic. I mean, I've seen you lift a full box of cauldrons. That's more than I can do. She doesn't laugh. You don't believe in any of this. I know that, she says quietly. And I never pushed you to. But that book belongs to you. And when you open it, your coven will find you. That makes me laugh. My what? Your coven, she says simply. I stare at her. Okay, maybe you should get some sleep. You think this is all just a business, she continues, voice even. You think magic isn't real, but you're wrong, Mia. I protected you from it. I kept you away because I thought you deserved a choice. But the choice is over. They know who you are now. There's that weird tightness in my chest again. I glance down at the book. The leather almost looks pulsing, like a heartbeat. Who knows who I am? I ask carefully. Grandma doesn't answer. She just reaches for my hand, squeezing it in hers. When the book calls to you, your coven will come. For some reason, I can't breathe. And when they do, sweetheart, you'll have to decide what kind of witch you want to be. Chapter 2. Business and Belief. Morning at Mystic Curiosities was always the same. Mom would come in exactly at 9, juggling her clipboard, coffee, and phone, already answering emails before the door even opened. Grandma would shuffle in 5 minutes later, ignoring Mom's protests that she should be resting. And me? I'd already be here, stocking the shelves, pricing candles, and drinking yesterday's cold coffee. Mom, you don't have to glare at her every time she walks in, I muttered, watching them from behind the counter. I wouldn't have to if she actually listened to me, Mom snapped. I don't need to be babied, Grandma huffed, heading straight to her desk. You need to take care of yourself, Mom corrected. We've been over this, Ma. You're supposed to be retired. You're not supposed to be in here messing with inventory and freaking out customers with your prophecies. They come for authenticity, Grandma said smoothly. They come for overpriced trinkets and Halloween vibes, Mom countered. That wasn't entirely wrong. I kept my mouth shut and adjusted the crystal display, listening to the familiar argument play out. The shop is more than a business, Grandma insisted, flipping through an old, yellowed ledger that had probably been here since the Salem trials. Mom sighed through her nose. No, it's not. It's a business that pays our rent and keeps the lights on, and you shouldn't be working anymore. I want to work, Grandma said. You want to cling to the past, and you want to erase it. Mom's jaw tightened. I felt the tension between them like a pressure in the air. This was an old fight, one they would never resolve. Grandma still saw the shop as sacred, as something magical. Mom saw it as a way to survive. And me? I was stuck in the middle, neither fully believing Grandma nor agreeing with Mom. After Mom stomped off to the back room, I turned to Grandma. You know, she's not wrong. You should rest. I'll rest when I'm dead, she said lightly. I forced a laugh, but it felt wrong after last night. Grandma sighed, studying me. You look tired, sweetheart. Gee, thanks. Did you sleep? I hesitated. Technically, yes, but it wasn't a good sleep. It had been full of weird dreams I couldn't quite remember. Whispers, shadows, the feeling of being watched. And when I woke up, the book was on my nightstand, right where I hadn't left it. I'm fine, I said quickly, shoving the thought away. She gave me a knowing look. The book is waking up, Mia. The book is a creepy antique, Grandma. It's part of you now. Oh my God. Please stop. Grandma just smiled like she knew something I didn't. That night, when I locked up, I checked the counter twice to make sure the book was still there. It was, right where I left it. I went upstairs to our apartment above the shop, changed into sweats, and collapsed onto my bed. At some point, I must have fallen asleep, because I woke up to the sound of pages turning. My heart slammed into my ribs. I sat up fast, my pulse hammering. The book was open. Flipping through its own pages, there was no wind, no fan, no reason. But the pages were moving, faster now, like someone was searching for something. And then, they stopped. I swallowed hard and leaned closer. The page was filled with handwriting that wasn't mine, wasn't Grandma's. It was old, dark ink, perfectly neat. And the words made my stomach drop. They know who you are. My hands turned cold. I slammed the book shut. Nope, nope, not doing this. I shoved it under my bed, turned on every light in my room, and pretended it never happened. Chapter 3. Ignoring the Supernatural. Like a pro. I didn't sleep after that. I mean, would you sleep after watching an ancient book flip through its own pages like it had somewhere to be? No, you would not. So I laid there, wide-eyed and vibrating with adrenaline, while my brain did its best to explain it away. Maybe I left the window open. I didn't. Maybe it was a weird draft. It wasn't. Maybe I was hallucinating from stress and too much caffeine. Possible. Maybe I was actually in a horror movie, in which case I was dying first for being a skeptic. Fantastic. Eventually, I decided the best course of action was pretend it never happened. I was a champion at ignoring problems. If there were an Olympics for denial, I'd have 3 gold medals and a sponsorship deal. So when morning came, I did what any rational person would do. Got dressed, put the book in my closet, shut the closet door, dragged my dresser in front of it for good measure, and then I went downstairs to run the shop like nothing was wrong. "You look like hell," Mom greeted as I entered. "Good morning to you too, sunshine," I muttered, pulling my hoodie tighter. Grandma gave me a knowing look from behind the counter. "Rough night?" I shot her a warning glare. "Do not say anything." She just smiled and went back to shuffling tarot cards like she was in on some joke I wasn't part of. "Mia, can you open the register? I need to update the inventory list," Mom called. "On it, boss." I went to the counter, turned the key in the old register, and every single bill inside was flipped upside down. I froze. No, nope, no, not today, Satan. I had closed the register myself last night, counted every bill, placed them all the same way. But now they were all reversed. Casual, normal. Not terrifying at all. I slammed the register shut and noped my way to the stockroom. Core. This is fine. Everything's fine. By the time lunch rolled around, I had successfully ignored all paranormal nonsense and convinced myself I was totally sane. Until I opened the storeroom door and found 3 shelves completely rearranged. Jars were swapped, candles were moved. The box of black salt, which should have been on the bottom shelf, was now on top. My eye twitched. "Mom, did you move the shelves around?" She barely glanced up from her laptop. "No. Why?" "Oh, no reason. Just wondering if we were haunted, that's all." "Ha, funny," she said, typing furiously. I turned to Grandma. She just sipped her tea. "It's starting, sweetheart." "Starting? No. No, nothing is starting. Things are just misplaced. Maybe we have a poltergeist. Maybe it's a burglar who specializes in subtle inconvenience. Or maybe..." Grandma leaned forward, voice low. "The book is waking up, Mia. It's calling you." I gave her my best deadpan stare. "Well, it can leave a message because I'm not picking up." That night, I lay in bed staring at my closet. The dresser was still in front of it. The book was still trapped inside. Everything was fine. Until someone knocked on the front door. I nearly jumped out of my skin. Who the hell knocks on a shop door at midnight? I grabbed my phone and a crystal paperweight because that was the closest thing to a weapon I had, and crept downstairs. Peering through the glass, I expected to see a lost tourist, a drunk, maybe even a cop. Instead, I saw 3 girls, dressed in black coats, standing too still, and all 3 of them were looking directly at me. Every hair on my body stood up. I did not open the door. "We know who you are, Mia," the one in the middle said. My stomach dropped. I should have turned away. I should have pretended I didn't hear them. Instead, I muttered, "Great, saves me an introduction." The girls smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. "You have something that belongs to us." The book. They knew about the book. I backed up before I even realized I was doing it. "Nope, sorry. You must have the wrong girl. I don't own anything except debt and bad decisions." The one on the left tilted her head. "You're the granddaughter of Eleanor Blackwood. That means you do own it, and soon you'll understand why it doesn't belong to you." There was something off about her voice, like she was speaking through a layer of static. I swallowed hard. "Cool, creepy, time for you to leave now." None of them moved. I locked the door, and then the girl in the middle lifted her hand. Something rippled through the air, like a shock wave I couldn't see, and the lights went out. So, to recap my night so far. My grandmother's creepy book started moving on its own. The shop rearranged itself. A trio of Hot Topic rejects showed up at midnight claiming I stole their magical property. And now, I was standing in complete darkness while something invisible and deeply unpleasant pressed against the glass. This was it. This was how I died. Not from some exciting international adventure. Not from a spontaneous shark attack while swimming off the Amalfi Coast. No, I was going to die in Mystic, Connecticut, murdered by paranormal goths outside my mom's candle shop. Mia? The voice came from the dark. Way too close. I grabbed the only weapon I had on hand, that crystal paperweight, and threw it at the door. It did nothing. The girl laughed. She laughed. You can't ignore this forever, she said. I was about to launch a second paperweight at her stupid face when a hand clamped onto my shoulder. I jumped so hard I nearly passed out. For the love of the goddess, Mia, Grandma muttered, yanking me away from the door. She waved her hand, and just like that, the shop lights flickered back on. I turned back to the door, heart slamming in my chest. The girls were gone. Not walking away gone. Not casually crossing the street gone. Just vanished. Like they were never there. I stared. I blinked. I turned to Grandma. Okay, so I have a few questions, I said, voice only slightly hysterical. She sighed. I know. Question 1. What the actual hell? Mia, nope, hang on, let me finish. Question 2. Who were those creepy girls? Question 3. What did they mean when they said the book doesn't belong to me? Question 4. Why did the lights go out like I suddenly became the protagonist in a low-budget horror movie? And question 5? I took a breath. Would it be okay if I had a small, controlled, nervous breakdown? Grandma gave me a very tired look. Sit down, sweetheart. It's time I told you the truth. You're taking stable canine. I sat at the kitchen table, arms folded, knee bouncing violently as Grandma calmly brewed herself a cup of tea, like we hadn't just been visited by actual demons. You're taking your time with that tea, I said. You know, given that my entire worldview is crumbling before my eyes. This is a jasmine blend, she said. Stirring in exactly 1 teaspoon of honey. It's very calming. You know what else is calming? Answers, she sighed. What do you know about witches, Mia? I blinked at her. They exist in folklore? They wear pointy hats? They got a bad deal in the 17th century? She arched a brow. Try again. They own wildly impractical bookstores and occasionally yell at me? She rolled her eyes. Mia, our family is descended from witches. Real ones. Not the ones on TV who twitch their noses and make cupcakes appear. We come from a long line of spellcasters, keepers of ancient knowledge, protectors of balance. I stared at her. Then I slowly reached for my phone. I'm just gonna Google some therapists real quick. Mia? No, it's fine. I hear delusions can be very manageable. Mia. Although I do worry that this is genetic, which means I need to call Mom. Mia. I snapped my mouth shut. She exhaled. I know this is a lot. But you need to listen. That book is yours now, and the girls outside tonight? They're part of a rival coven. And they will come back for it. I ran both hands down my face. Great. So now, I'm not just inheriting a family business. I'm inheriting a decades-old magical gang war. Super normal. Love that for me. Grandma gave me a look. You don't have to be so dramatic. I flailed a hand at her. I was just threatened by 3 witches in the middle of the night. Let me have this. Okay, fine. Explain it to me. All of it. Grandma set down her tea. Magic runs in bloodlines, but not every generation gets it. Your mother, it skipped her. But you? You're stronger than you know. The book has been waiting for you. Yeah, about that. Why is the book alive? Is that normal? Should I be concerned? The book isn't alive in the way you think, she said. It's a vessel of knowledge. It records magic, evolves, updates itself. It was meant to be passed down, but for decades I kept it hidden because I knew the others would come for it. I frowned. Who exactly are the others? Grandma's face darkened. Isabella Thorne's bloodline. That name meant nothing to me. Was she like an old landlord or something? She was my best friend, Grandma said softly, and my worst enemy. My brain short-circuited. Okay, cool, good, very healthy dynamic. Love that journey for you. Bella and I started out together, learning, experimenting. We updated the book, filled it with spells, discoveries, knowledge of creatures most people have never heard of. But then, Grandma's jaw tightened. Then she wanted to use magic for power, personal gain. I told her no, and when she refused to listen, I took the book and left. I absorbed that. So what happened to her? Grandma looked at me, eyes darker than I'd ever seen them. I won, I swallowed. And now her granddaughter is coming for revenge, isn't she? She nodded. I dropped my head into my hands. Of course she is, because nothing in my life can ever be simple. Mia, I know this is difficult, but you have to be careful. Isabella's bloodline will stop at nothing to take the book. And the power inside of you? It's waking up. You're about to become something far bigger than yourself. I peeked at her through my fingers. Can I opt out? No, I groaned. That tracks. I tried to pretend nothing had changed. I really did. After my horrifying midnight encounter, I had a solid 5-step survival plan. 1. Avoid Grandma so she couldn't give me more terrifying information. 2. Avoid the shop so I wouldn't have to deal with the book. 3. Avoid Mom so she wouldn't notice I was slowly unraveling. 4. Ignore all supernatural weirdness. 5. If any witches in black coats showed up, run in the opposite direction. It was a good plan. It lasted exactly 3 hours. Small oddities started happening. A stack of books fell off a shelf when I walked past. The store lights flickered when I got annoyed with a customer. I reached for a candle and the wick caught fire before I touched it. Just quirky little things. Normal. Fine. Until it wasn't. It was early afternoon and the shop was packed with tourists. Some rich lady in head-to-toe Lululemon was holding up the line, demanding to know if our amethyst was ethically sourced. I was 2 seconds away from committing violence. "Ma'am, I don't mind the crystals myself," I said, straining to keep my voice polite. "I have no idea if the amethyst lived a fulfilling life before arriving here." Lululemon huffed at me. "Well, that's disappointing. Energy matters, you know." At that moment, something inside me snapped. I didn't even feel it happen. I just blinked, and suddenly every single crystal on the display shelf shattered at the same time. The entire shop went dead silent. Lululemon gasped. "Oh my God, was that an omen?" I stared at the broken shards, heart pounding. I did that. I grabbed a dustpan and fake laughed like I wasn't having a crisis. "Ha! Whoops, guess the energy didn't like that question." The lady bought 3 sage bundles and left. Grandma was watching me. I could feel her stare burning into the side of my head. "Don't," I muttered. "Mia, nope, no, I refuse. You need to start learning how to control. I need to go lie down in traffic." That night, I was closing the shop alone, sweeping up the shattered crystal dust, when I felt it. A presence, like someone was standing right behind me. I turned, expecting Grandma or Mom. Instead, I saw a single black candle sitting in the middle of the counter. It hadn't been there before. I walked over slowly. It was lit, even though I hadn't touched it. Even though I had no idea how it got there. A chill crept down my spine. Then, a voice whispered, directly in my ear. "Getting stronger, aren't you?" I whirled around. No one was there. But I knew exactly who the voice belonged to. Celeste. I grabbed the candle, blew it out, and chucked it in the trash. "I hate witches," I muttered to myself, knowing damn well that I was one. "Okay," I said that night, pacing my bedroom. "Okay. Not a big deal. Just a little spontaneous crystal explosion. Just a casual, creepy candle gift from my enemy. Totally manageable. Totally fine." My dresser rattled. I froze. The closet door creaked open just an inch. Where the book was. I slowly, carefully walked over, pushed the door shut, and placed a heavy box of sweaters in front of it. There. Solved. No problems. Then the box moved by itself. Away from the door. I let out a long, exhausted sigh. Of course you'd be dramatic about it. The book flipped open. Words appeared on the page, scrawled in ink right before my eyes. "Time is running out. You need to be ready." I slammed it shut. "I need a vacation," I said out loud, "and a therapist, and possibly an exorcism." There were 2 main issues in my life right now. 1. I was officially a witch against my will. 2. Celeste Thorne had a weird way of looking at me, and I didn't know what to do about it. To be clear, problem number 1 was the priority. Problem number 2 was just an unfortunate side effect of problem number 1. That's what I told myself, anyway. "You're not focusing, Mia." I am focusing. I am focusing on how dumb this is. Grandma sighed and pinched the bridge of her nose. "You have to learn. Magic is waking up inside of you, and if you don't control it, it will control you." Right, because setting off a magical bomb inside my own shop sounds like a fantastic Tuesday. She gave me a pointed look. I sighed dramatically. Fine. What are we doing? Protection spells. Oh, that's easy. I already protect myself by avoiding my problems. Grandma ignored me and handed me a small pouch of herbs. You need to focus your energy. Pull from inside you. Let the magic know what you want. I stared at her. Cool. Do I look like someone who knows how to do that? She closed her eyes like she was praying for patience. Mia, just close your eyes and focus. All right. I closed my eyes. Thought about nothing. Focused on absolutely nothing. And then I felt it. A hum in my chest, a slight pull, a spark. I opened my eyes just as the pouch burst into flames in my hand. I yelped, chucked it across the room, and flailed like an idiot. Grandma sighed deeply. Well, I said, breathing heavily, that felt productive. She rubbed her temples. You're impossible. And yet, here I am. Later that night, I was closing up alone. Again. Because apparently, no one in my family respects horror movie rules. I was sweeping up when I felt it. A shift in the air. A slow curl of energy that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. And then, you're learning. I whirled around. Celeste stood by the front counter like she owned the place. Tall, poised, and entirely too composed for someone who just magically bypassed a locked door. She wore black, of course, because apparently dramatic entrances required a strict dress code, and her dark hair fell in loose waves over her shoulders, framing a face that was all sharp angles, high cheekbones, and cold, unreadable eyes. The kind of face that looked like it belonged in a portrait, or possibly a warning sign. Cool, I said, gripping the broom tighter. We're breaking and entering now. Love that for you. She smiled just a little. I don't need doors. Jesus Christ, I exhaled sharply. If you're here to kill me, can we do it after I finish sweeping? Otherwise, you're just making my life harder. She tilted her head, studying me. Too long. Too intense. I crossed my arms, refusing to squirm. What? I thought you'd be further along, she murmured. Sorry to disappoint. I'll try harder to meet your murder timeline. She laughed, like an actual laugh. Soft, amused. Like she thought I was funny. I did not know how to process this. What do you want, Celeste? I said, steeling myself. She took a single step forward. The air buzzed. I want what belongs to me, she said simply. And yet, you still don't have it. Must be embarrassing. Wrong move. She was in front of me in seconds. I barely had time to breathe before she was too close, too real, too solid. She smelled like rain and something sharp, like burned sage. Her voice was low. You're making this harder than it needs to be. Funny, I was just about to say the same thing. She smirked. Actual literal smirk. And then, to my absolute horror, she reached out and tucked a loose strand of hair behind my ear. My brain short-circuited. What was happening? Why was she touching me? I did not react well. I jumped back so fast I tripped over the broom, landed on my ass, and took down an entire display of salt jars with me. Absolute humiliation. Celeste raised a single brow. Smooth, she said. Oh my God, shut up. She laughed again. Full-on laughed. I hated her. I really, truly, deeply hated her. I'll see you soon, Mia, she said. And then she was gone. Just vanished. I sat there, covered in salt, regretting every single life choice that led me to this moment. Okay, so, a recap. Celeste Thorne, leader of the coven that wants me dead, had just broken into my shop, invaded my space, and touched my hair like we were in some kind of forbidden enemies to lovers novel, which we absolutely were not. And now, I was having a small, controlled existential crisis. The next morning, I walked into the kitchen, poured myself a coffee, and sat across from Grandma, determined to act completely normal. You're thinking too loud, she said without looking up from her tea. I immediately tensed. I don't know what that means. It means you're trying to convince yourself of something you don't believe. Again, no idea what you're talking about. She sighed. Mia, what happened? I took a long, slow sip of coffee. Nothing. Nothing? Nothing. Grandma gave me a long, knowing stare. So if I went downstairs, I wouldn't find a broken display, salt all over the floor, and a broom with a suspiciously human-shaped dent in it. I froze. Then I calmly placed my mug down and said, hypothetically speaking, what if I said, maybe? She just closed her eyes and muttered something that sounded suspiciously like a prayer. I froze. The shop was busy again. Apparently, October made everyone believe they were a witch for a month. I was midway through explaining to a guy in a beanie that no, we did not sell real love potions, when I felt it. A prickle of awareness, like I was being watched. I turned and locked eyes with Celeste. Oh, for the love of... She was standing across the street, leaning against a lamppost like she was in some kind of perfume ad. I immediately whipped back around. Mia? Beanie guy blinked at me. So, do you sell anything to, like, enhance attraction? Hypothetically? Hypothetically, you should leave, I muttered, grabbing the next customer. But I could still feel her. She wasn't moving. Just watching. I refused to look again. I was going to be normal. I was going to sell crystals and tarot decks and overpriced incense and pretend that Celeste Thorne wasn't standing outside my shop like she had nothing better to do. Gore. Later that night, I told myself I wasn't thinking about her. I was very busy, not thinking about the way she looked at me. Not thinking about how close she'd been. Not thinking about the way my stupid heart had tripped over itself for half a second. Nope, none of that was happening. I was Mia Blackwood, professional problem avoider. I had bigger issues, like for example the fact that Celeste's coven wanted me dead. So when I heard a knock at the front door, I did not immediately panic. Okay, I panicked a little. I grabbed a wooden spoon, because apparently that was my version of a self-defense weapon now, and slowly crept downstairs. I peeked through the glass. It was not Celeste, it was one of her coven members, and she did not look friendly. I cracked the door open exactly 2 inches. We're closed, I said. The girl, tall, lean, sharp features and mean eyes, did not smile. Celeste is being too soft with you, she said. Oh wow, I love that we're just jumping straight into the threats. No foreplay, huh? Her eyes narrowed. You think this is funny? I think this is unnecessary and rude. Seriously, some of us are trying to enjoy our evening. You don't deserve that book. Not this again, I muttered. Do you guys have a script? Does it start with, Mia, you have something that belongs to us every time? Or do you get to freestyle? Her expression darkened. Celeste might be playing games, but I'm not. If you don't hand over the book, we will take it. And it won't be pretty. The air went heavy. I felt it press against my skin. Magic. I swallowed. Okay. So this was happening. I knew I should just shut the door. Walk away. Let Grandma handle it. But something inside me, maybe something reckless, something magic, something mine, refused. So I stood my ground. You can try, I said. Her eyes flashed. I felt the spell before I saw it, a pulse of energy, dark and cold, rushing toward me. And then I threw my hand out like I could stop it. And somehow, I did. The magic slammed into something midair, like an invisible shield. The girl's expression flickered. Huh, she said. Yeah, huh, I muttered. I had no idea how I did that. She took a step back, eyes assessing. This isn't over, she said. Oh wow, shocking. What a plot twist, I deadpanned. She glared one last time, then vanished. I stood there, heart pounding, brain short-circuiting. What the hell did I just do? And more importantly, what the hell was I supposed to do next? Okay, so. Last night, I accidentally blocked an attack from a witch who definitely wanted to murder me, with magic. Which was a thing I was apparently capable of doing now. And instead of panicking immediately, I did what any mentally stable person would do. I went to bed and had a completely normal, restful sleep. Just kidding. I sat awake staring at the ceiling for 6 hours and internally screamed the entire time. Gundam. So, fun story. Grandma looked up from her tea, already exhausted. Oh dear. I sat across from her, arms folded. Let's say, hypothetically, that someone tried to hex me last night. She blinked. And let's also say, hypothetically, that I somehow blocked it. She set her tea down very slowly. Oh, and one more hypothetical thing. I leaned forward. What the hell does that mean? Grandma let out a long, measured breath. It means your power has finally surfaced. I stared at her. Great, thanks for that super detailed explanation. Wow, so helpful. Mia? No, really, I'm thrilled to know that I have some kind of magical force field. This is really rounding out my skill set nicely. Grandma sighed. You're a warder, sweetheart. I blinked. A what now? Your magic is strongest in protection-based spells. Shields, wards, barriers. Okay, wait, so my superpower is to block things? Essentially. I processed that. That sucks. Mia? No, I'm serious. Everyone else gets cool offensive magic, and I get to be a glorified human shield? What kind of unfair Hogwarts sorting is this? Grandma gave me a flat look. Wards are some of the most powerful spells a witch can cast. They take incredible control, precision, and strength. Oh great, so I'm a glorified human shield with high expectations. Awesome. Grandma ignored me. Your power is already strong. You just don't know how to control it yet. I rubbed both hands down my face. Oh yeah, no, that sounds fine. I definitely want more magic-related responsibilities in my life. That won't make me spiral at all. Grandma just kept sipping her tea. I glared. You're enjoying this, aren't you? A little more scormer? I spent the rest of the day pretending I wasn't in the middle of a magical crisis. I was doing great. Right up until Celeste showed up again. This time I spotted her before she spotted me. She was sitting in the back of the Mystic Bean, sipping a coffee and staring at nothing in particular, which meant I could totally just turn around and leave. Except I was already in the shop, and she'd already seen me. Shit, I froze. Her gaze locked onto mine, unreadable. I had two options. 1, walk away like a coward. 2, pretend I was totally cool and in control. So naturally, I went with option number 3. Walk in, immediately trip over my own feet, and nearly knock over a display of coffee mugs. Fantastic. Celeste did not smile, but I could tell she wanted to. I grabbed my coffee, stalked over to her table, and sat down. Are you following me? Or is Mystic just that small? I asked. She tilted her head. Would it bother you if I was? What? Nope, absolutely not. I was not engaging with this. Depends, I said smoothly. Are you following me because you want to kill me, or is this just a deeply misguided social experiment? She hummed. I haven't decided yet. Oh, good, okay, totally fine. Not terrifying at all. I took a long sip of coffee, pretending I had control over this situation. Your coven came for me last night, I said. She exhaled sharply. I know, that surprised me. And, she said, voice clipped. They weren't supposed to. Oh, I raised a brow. So what, you lost control of your scary minions? Her jaw ticked. They thought I was being too lenient with you, she admitted. I snorted. Yeah, I can see how treating me like a chew toy might not sit well with them. Her fingers tightened around her coffee cup. I tilted my head, suddenly curious. Let me guess, I said, studying her. They want the book for power. You want it for something else. Her eyes flicked to mine, sharp. I was right. You're smarter than you look, she murmured. And you're more predictable than you think, I shot back. Something darkened in her expression, just for a second. Then, before I could process it, she leaned forward just slightly, not touching me, but close enough to make my brain completely short-circuit. I could destroy you, you know, she said. I swallowed. Yep, that sounded about right. But instead of flinching, I forced myself to smirk. You're welcome to try, I said. Her lips curved at the edges, and just like that, she stood up, coffee in hand, and walked away, leaving me sitting there, heart racing, absolutely unwell. At this point, I had several immediate problems. 1, I had magic now. It was real, and I couldn't ignore it. 2, Celeste's coven was getting impatient. 3, Celeste herself was a different problem entirely. 4, I still had a job to do, which was wildly inconvenient given problems number 1, 3. So naturally, instead of dealing with any of it, I spent the next morning aggressively avoiding Grandma while pretending to dust the same shelf for 20 minutes. Are you finished stalling? I turned to see Grandma watching me, arms crossed, face unimpressed. What? No, I'm actually very busy. She glanced at the shelf of already cleaned candles I'd been fake dusting. Fascinating work, she said flatly. I sighed. You can't put this off, she said, stepping forward. You need to learn control. Yeah, because I'm a super special chosen one or whatever. Grandma ignored me. We'll start with something simple. Like levitation? Like keeping your mouth shut long enough to concentrate. Rude. She set a small bowl of water on the counter. Hold your hands over it, she instructed. I frowned. Is this a trick to make me wash the dishes? Mia? Fine. I hovered my hands over the bowl. Feel the energy beneath your fingers, Grandma said. Like a thread, waiting to be pulled. I closed my eyes, trying not to feel ridiculous. At first, there was nothing. Just me, standing there like an idiot, hands hovering over a bowl of perfectly normal, non-magical water. And then, a faint pull, like a static charge in the air. My fingers tingled. I opened my eyes just in time to see the water ripple, just slightly. I gasped and immediately spilled half the bowl onto the floor. Oh my God, did you see that? I turned to Grandma. I am a god. She exhaled through her nose. You moved water a quarter of an inch. Yes, but with my mind. And very little control. Okay, well, let's not ruin my moment. Grandma shook her head. We have a lot of work to do. Cool, can I start by learning how to set things on fire? Absolutely not. Meanwhile, elsewhere in town, Celeste was not pleased. Her coven sat in a dark, candlelit room, waiting for her verdict. We should have killed her already, said Lena, the one who had tried and failed to hex Mia last night. We're wasting time. Celeste tilted her head. You think it's that easy? She's untrained. She's getting stronger. A flicker of silence. Celeste's fingers tapped the wooden table. She's a warder. Lena frowned. So? Celeste's voice was even, unreadable. That means she's harder to kill than you think. Another beat of silence. Then, finally, if you want something done, Lena said coolly, standing, sometimes you have to do it yourself. Celeste watched her go, expression unreadable. She did not stop her. It was just past closing time when I heard the bell over the shop door ring. I turned, expecting to see Mom or Grandma. Instead, Lena stood there. Oh, fantastic. We're closed, I said, unbothered. I know, she said. I paused. Okay, well, since you know that, I'm just gonna go ahead and assume this is another murder attempt. I'm here for the book, I sighed deeply. All right, do you want to steal it the old-fashioned way, or are we doing this with unnecessary theatrics? Her fingers twitched. I felt the magic ripple through the air before she even moved. Cool, we're doing theatrics, I muttered. I barely had time to react before she sent something sharp and invisible flying toward me. I threw up my hands. There was a burst of energy, and suddenly, the magic bounced right off me. Lena stumbled back. I blinked. Oh, I said. That's neat. She glared. You don't even know what you're doing, do you? Not even a little. She sent another wave of magic at me. This one's stronger. I had no clue how I blocked it, but I did. The energy collided with an invisible wall, shattering like glass. And for the first time, Lena actually looked nervous. I grinned. Yeah, okay, this is kind of fun. She hissed out a breath. This isn't over. Oh, I bet it's not, I said cheerfully. Then, just like before, she vanished, leaving me standing there, very much alive, and very much realizing I had absolutely no idea what the hell I was doing. I had questions. A lot of them. Like, what was I actually capable of? How did Grandma win the book? Why was Celeste being all mysterious and ominous instead of just killing me? Could I get through a single day without someone trying to explode me with magic? Since the answer to the last one was clearly no, I figured it was time to get some real answers. Tell me what actually happened, Isabella Thorne. All right, I said, slamming my hands on the kitchen table. Enough secrets. Tell me what actually happened between you and Isabella Thorne. Grandma sighed deeply, like she'd been waiting for this, but also wished I'd just let it go. We were 16 when we found the book, she said. I blinked. Wait, you didn't make it? She shook her head. The book is ancient. It existed long before us, but we added to it. We spent years studying magic, testing spells, recording our findings. We built on what was already there. I frowned. So what went wrong? Grandma's gaze darkened. Bella wanted more, she said simply. She believed that if we pushed the limits, we could rewrite the book itself, change the rules of magic, do things no coven had ever done before. That sounds, deeply irresponsible. It was. I leaned forward. So what did you do? I told her no, she said, but she refused to stop, so I challenged her. I blinked. Like in a duel? Yes. Like in a dramatic, over-the-top, we shall now engage in magical combat kind of way? Grandma just sipped her tea. Holy shit, I whispered. You fought her for it. I won. How? She met my eyes. Because my power is the one thing she couldn't overcome, she said. I take magic from others. I strip them of it. I made her powerless. I stared. You stole her magic? I unmade it, she corrected. I bound it so it would skip a generation. That is, I shook my head. That's terrifying. It was necessary, so that means I swallowed. If Celeste is like her, then she's more dangerous than Bella ever was. I was officially done pretending I wasn't in the middle of a supernatural war. No more half-training, no more avoiding reality, no more sarcastic one-liners to deflect from my deep existential dread. Okay, maybe I'd still keep the sarcasm, but otherwise, I was in. Because last night, Celeste had stormed into my shop trying to take the book. Tonight, her own coven was going to come for her. And I wasn't sure if I wanted to help her survive or watch the drama unfold with popcorn. Meanwhile, at the Witches R Us headquarters, you were supposed to be our leader, Lena said. Celeste stood motionless, her back to the coven, as they circled her in the abandoned lot behind the old train station. I am, she said, voice steady. No, Lena corrected, stepping forward. You're weak. The air buzzed with magic. Cassius stood to Lena's left, arms crossed, expression blank. Marigold was grinning. Oh, I like this, Marigold purred. I love a good backstabbing. Celeste's fingers curled into fists. You're making a mistake, she said. Lena smirked. No, you did when you hesitated. And just like that, Lena attacked. A blast of shadow magic, sharp as knives, flying straight for Celeste's heart. Celeste barely dodged. The spell cut across her shoulder instead, sending a spray of blood into the dirt. She staggered, but she didn't fall. She just laughed. Low, dark, dangerous. Oh, you're gonna regret that, she whispered. I woke up to pounding on my door. I groaned, rolled over, and yelled, We're closed. The pounding continued. I swung my legs out of bed and stomped downstairs, ready to curse out whatever tourist thought a cursed trinket shop should be open at 3 a.m. Instead, I opened the door to Celeste, bleeding and furious. She shoved past me. Cool, come on in, I muttered. Don't mind the fact that this is my house or anything. She grabbed my wrist, fingers tight. Lena tried to kill me, she said. I stared. Then finally I said, Okay, so is this the part where I say I told you so, or the part where I act shocked and concerned? Celeste's breath was shaky. She was scared. I had never seen Celeste scared. They're coming for the book, she said. They're not alone. My stomach dropped. Who did Lena bring? Celeste swallowed. The Banshee Coven. I had never heard of them before. But judging by the way Grandma's teacup shattered in her hand from across the room, I could guess they weren't exactly friendly. Pack your things, Mia, Grandma said, voice cold. War just arrived in Mystic. Arms crossed. I had exactly 30 minutes to process the fact that an unknown group of murder witches was about to come knocking. So, I said, standing in my shop, arms crossed. You're telling me that your plan was to steal the book, fail, piss off my grandma, and then immediately need my help? Celeste didn't look at me. She was wrapping her wound with a strip of fabric, jaw tight, eyes unfocused. I stepped closer. Hey, you're losing a lot of blood. You're making a mess on my floor. You need to sit down. I'm fine, she said automatically. You're not fine, you're leaking. She didn't answer. I sighed and grabbed her wrist, forcing her to sit. If you die of blood loss, I'll have no one to argue with, I muttered, tying the bandage tighter. For a second, just a second, her fingers brushed mine. The air felt too thick, too charged. I swallowed. She was looking at me, and then, boom, the front door exploded off its hinges. Magic rushed in, thick as fog, choking the air. And standing in the doorway, Lena, Cassius, Marigold. And behind them, a dozen unfamiliar witches, eyes glowing in the dark. Oh, I whispered, that's a lot of people who want to kill us. Celeste got to her feet. Stay behind me, she murmured. And I was too stunned to argue. There was a moment of pure, suffocating silence before all hell broke loose. Lena stepped forward, boots crunching over shattered wood and glass. Her black cloak billowed in the wind, and the coven behind her stood like shadows with glowing eyes. I felt Celeste tense beside me. Give us the book, and we'll let you live, Lena said. She was lying. Even I could tell that. I should have been terrified. But all I could think was, I don't know who to punch first. Celeste's voice was low, shaking with barely restrained fury. You're making a mistake, Lena, Lena smirked. No, I'm finishing what you wouldn't. She lifted a hand wreathed in black fire. Kill them! Calm. It happened all at once. The first spell ripped through the air like lightning, aimed straight for my heart. Celeste knocked me out of the way. I hit the floor hard, barely rolling in time to avoid another spell that burned straight through the wall behind me. Shit. This wasn't a warning fight. They were actually trying to kill us. Celeste was already on her feet. blocking, deflecting, countering, but there were too many of them. I scrambled back, breathing fast. My hands tingled with power, but I didn't know how to use it. And then, a shadow moved behind me, cold breath on my neck. I barely had time to turn before a hand closed around my throat. "You're not strong enough to survive this, little Blackwood," Marigold whispered, lips brushing my ear. The air ripped from my lungs. Magic surged through me, dark, crushing, hungry. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. I was going to die. And then, the room shook. A pulse of magic so powerful it knocked everyone back. I gasped, collapsing to my knees. And when I looked up, Grandma was standing in the center of the shop, eyes burning gold. "I told you," she said softly. "You do not touch my granddaughter." She lifted a single hand. The air crackled, and then the ground split open. A shockwave of magic ripped outward, sending half the witches flying. Cassius hit the floor hard, rolling onto her back, gasping. Marigold screamed. Even Lena staggered. She wiped blood from her mouth and smiled. "There she is," she whispered. Grandma turned her gaze to her. "I should have killed you first," she said. Lena lunged, and the fight began again. I barely had time to process Grandma's power before another witch came at me. I ducked. Instinct took over. I threw my hands out. Barrier magic slammed into my attacker, sending her flying through a shelf. Holy shit. Mia! I turned. Celeste was bleeding again. 2 witches had her cornered. She was losing, and I don't know what came over me. I just moved. I threw myself between them, barrier magic crackling around my skin. "Get the hell away from her," I snapped. They turned toward me, sneering. And then I dropped the shield. Celeste didn't miss a beat. She moved faster than I could see, spell burning in her hands, slicing through one witch, then the other. They collapsed. Not dead, but close. Celeste turned to me, breathing hard, hair wild. "You just saved me," she said. "You're welcome," I said. "Try not to make it a habit, yeah?" Her gaze flickered. Something passed between us, something electric, charged, and impossible to ignore. Then she looked away. "Stay close," she murmured, and just like that, we were fighting side by side. Lena was powerful, but she wasn't Eleanor Blackwood. Magic crashed through the shop, tearing through walls, sending glass flying. Grandma moved like a storm, unrelenting, every spell precise, controlled, devastating. She was winning. And then, a single dagger whipped through the air, buried itself in Grandma's shoulder. She staggered, gasping. "No!" I screamed. The entire shop seemed to freeze. Grandma hit the floor, blood pooling beneath her. Everything in me broke. Lena stood over her, smiling. "You should have stayed dead," she whispered, and then she lifted her hands, black magic gathering between them, ready to finish it. I moved without thinking. Something surged inside me, something raw and primal. Magic exploded from me, raw and unshaped. Lena flew backward, crashing into the wall with a sickening crack. The shop shook. For the first time, Lena looked afraid. I stood over her, power thrumming in my veins, hands shaking. "You shouldn't have touched her," I said, voice cold. Lena snarled. She vanished in a burst of black smoke. The remaining witches fled. Just like that, the battle was over, and Grandma was dying in my arms. Grandma wasn't dead, but she wasn't awake either. I sat next to her hospital bed, gripping her hand, trying to process what had just happened. The battle, the fire, the book still buzzing with power inside my bag. Celeste sat across the room, arms crossed, one leg bouncing restlessly. She hadn't said a word since we got here. Mom stood by the window, still in shock, still trying to piece everything together. Finally, she exhaled. "So magic is real." Celeste snorted. "Welcome to the party." Mom turned, eyes flashing. "And you're the enemy, aren't you?" Celeste held up both hands. "Not anymore." Mom's gaze hardened. "You got my mother nearly killed." "Technically," Celeste said casually. "Lena did that." "Not the right answer." "Get out," Mom snapped. Celeste lifted a brow but didn't argue. She just stood up and left. I ran a hand through my hair. "Mom?" "No," Mom turned to me. "I need time to process, and you need to leave, both of you, before they come back." I swallowed. "Where are you going?" I asked. "Boston." My stomach dropped. "Mom, I can't be here right now, Mia," she said, voice tight. "I'll stay with Aunt Liv until this is over, and when I come back, I expect you and your friend to have handled it." My friend. I didn't correct her. I just nodded. And an hour later, Celeste and I were on the road, the book between us, heading toward the only place left to hide. I had questions, but first, I had to survive the worst car ride of my life. Celeste drove in silence, eyes locked on the road, her knuckles white. Are we going to talk about it? I asked. No. Cool. Great conversation. I stared out the window. Love our friendship, she exhaled sharply. We're not friends. You're right, my bad. My friendship standards are way higher. She gripped the wheel tighter. It was dawn by the time we reached her so-called safe house. This is your cabin? I asked, eyeing the run-down wooden structure. You couldn't afford one with, I don't know, working plumbing? Shut up and get inside, she muttered. The inside was small but clean. A stone fireplace, shelves filled with old books, a worn-out couch, and a tiny kitchen. I dropped my bag on the floor. So what's the plan? Celeste stood by the window, watching the trees like she expected someone to burst through them any second. We wait, she said. We regroup. We find out what the book wants. I flopped onto the couch. Cool, let me know how that goes. She glared at me. Do you ever shut up? I grinned. Only when I'm asleep. Sometimes not even then. She sighed and turned away. And for some reason, I felt a tiny flicker of victory. Because even if she wouldn't admit it, Celeste was stuck with me now. Celeste threw a blanket at my face. We sleep in shifts, she said. Oh wow, I feel so safe, I muttered. You're so warm and welcoming. She ignored me and dropped onto the other couch. I pulled the blanket over me and closed my eyes. I must have fallen asleep because the next thing I knew, the book was glowing. I snapped awake. It was sitting on the floor exactly where I left it, but the pages were flipping on their own. Celeste. She was already awake. She knelt by the book, eyes narrowed. It's speaking. I swallowed. Yeah, cool, love that. The pages stopped. The words shifted, twisting, spelling something new. One must die. My blood went cold. Celeste stared. What the hell does that mean? I whispered. She looked at me. It means we're running out of time. The words burned on the page like a brand. One must die. I stared. I did not like that. Okay, I said, trying to keep my voice level. Is this like a general statement? Or are we talking about a specific someone? The book did not answer. Celeste stood over it, jaw tight, hands clenched into fists. It's a blood sacrifice, she said finally. I turned to her. What? Her expression was dark, unreadable. The book is choosing, she murmured. Magic demands balance. A war is being fought over it. It's trying to end it. I let out a hollow laugh. Right, because a magic book suddenly grew a moral compass. That makes perfect sense. Celeste's eyes flickered toward me. It might not be asking. It might be warning. The room felt too quiet, too still. You think it means one of us? I asked. Her gaze didn't waver. The fire had burned low, shadows stretching long against the cabin walls. Celeste hadn't moved from the book in over an hour. I watched her. She hadn't cleaned the dried blood on her skin. Her hair was still tangled from the fight. She looked exhausted. I sat up, stretching. If I dropped dead, I'd like sarcasm was her only defense mechanism. On my headstone. Celeste exhaled sharply. You're not dying. You don't know that. She finally turned to me. No, but if it comes down to it, if it's one of us, it won't be you. My stomach twisted. So what, you're volunteering? I said, voice light, but something cold coiled in my chest. Celeste said nothing. That silence bothered me. I woke up to something not quite right, a pressure in the air, a smell like burning wood and rotting earth. Celeste was already on her feet, knife in hand. They're here. I scrambled up just as the first blast of magic shattered the front window. We were under attack. Celeste grabbed me, shoving me behind her as fire erupted in the fireplace, spilling across the cabin floor like liquid. Move. I dodged the next blast, rolling into the kitchen, grabbing the first thing I saw, a cast-iron skillet, because obviously I was going to fight a coven of murder witches with a cooking utensil. The door exploded inward. Lena stood there, smiling. You always run, Celeste, she cooed. How's that working out for you? Celeste's magic snapped through the air, but Lena dodged it easily. You should have let me kill you last time, Lena mused. Would have been quicker. I was so over this. Oh my God, I said loudly. You are so dramatic. Do you practice these lines in the mirror? Lena's eyes flicked to me, sharp. And you, she sneered. You don't even belong in this fight. You're not a real witch. Something in me snapped. The book buzzed against my ribs, and for the first time, I felt it choose. Magic surged through me, thick and heavy. Lena's smirk vanished. She felt it too. "Oh," she whispered. "Oh, you're changing." The battle was chaos. Magic tore through the air, ripping wood from the cabin walls, setting the ground ablaze. Celeste and I fought side by side. The cabin was coming down, and at some point, we had to run. We stumbled into the woods, breathless, shaking, alive. Celeste's fingers were tight around my wrist, dragging me forward. We didn't stop until the sounds of battle were gone. She spun toward me, wild-eyed, furious. "You should have run," she snapped. "Wow, great plan. Leave you to die? Fantastic strategy." She glared at me. We were too close. My chest was still heaving, my hands shaking. The book had chosen me. Celeste knew it, and I could see it in her eyes. She was afraid. Not of me. Or me. I don't know who moved first. All I know is that suddenly her mouth was on mine. It wasn't gentle, it wasn't soft, it was desperate, sharp, frustrated. And it changed nothing. Because we were still enemies, still trapped in a war. And I still didn't know if I could trust her. When she finally pulled back, breathless, eyes unreadable, she whispered, "You should have run." And then she was gone. Celeste was gone. 1 second, she was in front of me, breath still warm on my lips, eyes dark with something unreadable. The next, vanished into the trees. I stood there, chest heaving, mind reeling. My lips still tingled from the kiss, and I hated her for it, because I knew exactly what she was doing. She thought she could run from this. From me. From whatever the hell was happening between us. Not happening. I slung the book over my shoulder, wiped the blood off my face, and followed. The forest was too quiet. The book was too warm against my back. It had been changing since the attack at the cabin, the pages turning when no one touched them, shifting their words. Now, as I walked, it flipped again. The ink bled across the page, rearranging itself. "You are the last Blackwood. She is the last thorn. Only one of you walks away." I stopped breathing. The words shimmered, pulsed, and then vanished. I snapped the book shut, my stomach tight with nausea. "Fantastic," I muttered. "Love a good death prophecy." But I didn't stop moving. By the time I found her, it was already too late. Celeste stood in the center of an abandoned train yard, bruised, bloody, backed against a rusted-out train car. Lena and her witches had her surrounded. The night was thick with the smell of magic, burning wood, blood. Lena tilted her head, grinning. "You really thought you could run, didn't you?" Celeste's breath was shallow, eyes flicking to the shadows. She was looking for me. Lena didn't notice. She reached out, gripping Celeste's jaw, forcing her to meet her gaze. "Poor Celeste," she cooed. "All that power, and you never learned how to use it right." Celeste's fingers twitched. She wasn't out of fight, but she was outnumbered, and Lena knew it. "This is what happens to traitors," Lena murmured. Then she raised her other hand, a dagger gleaming in the moonlight. She was going to kill her. I moved before I could think. And my hack hit Lena like a bullet. I hit Lena like a bullet. 1 second she was grinning, the next she was on the ground, my hands wrapped around her throat. Celeste gasped, stumbling back. "Mia," Lena snarled. Magic crackled through her fingers, but I was faster. The book burned against my back, and suddenly, I wasn't just fighting. I was becoming. The magic rose in me like a flood, cold and endless. The book's power coursed through my veins, turning my skin fever-hot. I saw Lena's face change. For the first time, she was horrified. "You can't," she gasped. "You don't even know what you are." I tightened my grip, and then, Celeste's hand closed over mine. "Mia," she whispered. "Don't." The magic buckled inside me, fighting to be let out, but Celeste's touch was steady, grounding, and for some stupid, impossible reason, I let her pull me back. Lena gasped for air, rolling onto her hands and knees. She wasn't smiling anymore. She vanished a second later, taking what was left of her witches with her. The battle was over, but I wasn't sure if I'd won. The silence after was heavy. I turned to Celeste. She was watching me like I was something dangerous. Which, fair. I was still shaking, my hands tingling, my head pounding. The book had chosen me, and for the first time, I had felt it fully. I swallowed hard. "You stopped me," I said quietly. Celeste exhaled. "Yeah, I did." I hesitated. "Why?" She licked her lips, looking away. "Because I don't want you to become her." I wasn't sure if she meant Lena or herself. The thought unnerved me. I took a step forward. She tensed. I should have let it go. I didn't. I grabbed her by the collar and kissed her. Hard. Like I was trying to drown something out. Like I needed to remind myself I was alive. She kissed me back, just as desperate, just as reckless. But when we finally pulled apart, her eyes were unreadable again. "This isn't over," she murmured. I swallowed. "I know." We both looked at the book. It sat silent, still, waiting. It would always be waiting. For what? For who? I wasn't sure. But as Celeste and I walked out of the wreckage together, I knew one thing for certain. I wasn't running anymore.
And that concludes the tale of Mia, Celeste, and the book that refuses to be forgotten. A story of power, betrayal, and a war that may not be over just yet. This one was a bit different from my usual stories, so if you liked it, let me know. And if you prefer the eerie, creeping horror, don't worry, I've got plenty more of that coming. Thanks for listening, and until next time, stay curious and stay safe.